This is Atomic Biscuits, and I'm your host, BACFA. Welcome back to another episode of Atomic Biscuits. This is 2025-0608 Shelf Life. Britain imposes Islamic blasphemy law as man is convicted of burning a Quran. This is by Ben Q over at the website thegatewaypundit.com. Britain's transformation into an Islamic state is almost complete. The case in question relates to a man who has been convicted of a religiously aggravated public order offense after he burned a Quran outside the Turkish consulate in London. The Spectator magazine reports, this law has been created by the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, and District Judge John McGarva. Between them, they have prosecuted and found a man guilty of a religiously aggravated public order offense because he burned a Quran outside the Turkish consulate. The CPS mounted a prosecution conflating the religious institution of Islam with Muslims as people, and a British judge has accepted this. Islamic blasphemy codes are now being enforced by arms of the British state via what the National Secular Society describes as a troubling repurposing of public order laws as a proxy for blasphemy laws. Hamit Koskun burned a Quran outside the Turkish consulate in February before being attacked by a man named Musa Kadri, who has since pled guilty to the assault. Mr. Koskun was initially charged under the Crime and Disorder Act with intent to cause against the religious institution of Islam harassment, alarm, or distress. On sentencing Koskun, the left-wing activist Judge John McGarva said Koskun's conduct was provocative and taunting, and accused him of harboring a deep-seated hatred of Islam and its followers. There's a link here to the Free Speech Union on X. It's not possible to separate your views about the religion to your views about the followers, McGarva declared. Your actions in burning the Quran, where you did, were highly provocative, and your actions were accompanied by bad language, in some cases directed toward the religion, and were motivated at least in part by hatred of followers of the religion. Koskun was fined £240, which is about $325 with a statutory surcharge of £96 or $130. According to the BBC, Koskun denounced his conviction as an assault on free speech and will deter others from exercising their democratic rights, and said he would lodge an appeal. Meanwhile, Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch said that such laws would set Britain on a road to ruin. This case should go to appeal, she said. Freedom of belief and freedom not to believe are inalienable rights in Britain. And you've got to wonder, how do you extrapolate decisions like this to other religions and other belief systems? What defenses and offenses then are fair game and arrestable in Britain? But we're going to have to think carefully about, how does this affect Christianity? How does this affect Satanism? How does this affect other belief systems that are secular? And then what sorts of offenses can they then find illegal? It's going to be a strange day to see how this all plays out. Over at ZeroHedge.com, White House sends Congress $9.4 billion in Doge cuts after Musk rages against Big Beautiful Bill. This is by Tyler Durden. Now, just my take on this is, I think this is an optics move. This is something we've seen before, where if you keep your enemies close and all that good stuff, you also have to sometimes distance yourself from those who are close to you in other ways. So if they think that there is division, they'll seize upon it. It also isn't lost on Musk that Tesla has been getting some beating up because of his affiliation with Doge. The thing is it doesn't really require him specifically to be at the helm. He's already got it in motion. And the way that it was set up and directed by the president, it's going to continue going even without Musk. Well, that didn't take long. Hours after Elon Musk raged against GOP's Big Beautiful Bill, the White House sent Congress a request to claw back $9.4 billion in funding for foreign aid and public broadcasting, the first move to codify cuts identified by the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. According to White House Budget Director Russ Vought, the White House chose the easiest DOGE cuts to start rescissions, which would cancel the $9.4 billion in previously appropriated funds. The rescissions include $1.1 billion in cuts for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which distribute funding to NPR and PBS, and $8.3 billion in cuts to USAID. The rescission process allows Congress to cancel previously allocated yet unspent funds. Only discretionary funds can be rescinded, while mandatory spending such as Social Security and Medicare cannot be. Rescission bills in the Senate only require a simple majority. Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, backs the rescission package, calling it the low-hanging fruit, but also stated the obvious. This is very, very small, he told Face the Nation's Margaret Brennan this week. It really doesn't materially change the course of the country. It took almost no time at all for the Democrats to pounce after Elon Musk slammed the GOP tax bill as a massive, outrageous, pork-filled, disgusting abomination that doesn't even attempt to codify any federal savings found by DOGE and continues America's addiction to spending, is what the update was just a little while prior. I agree with Elon Musk, said Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, adding, even Elon Musk, who's been part of the whole process and is one of Trump's buddies, say the bill is bad. We can imagine how bad this bill is. Now, you would think that Chuck Schumer, who has read the bill right, can tell you what's wrong with it. There's lots of X posts here. House Speaker Mike Johnson is clearly freaking out, suggesting on X that DOGE cuts will be codified by Congress via the rescissions process and appropriations process, and insisting that with all due respect, Elon's simply wrong about the one big beautiful bill. Former Representative Austin Amash, Republican from Michigan, a libertarian, hit it on the head, writing on X, Republicans in the House are undoubtedly seething right now. Members of Congress knowingly vote for garbage with the expectation they'll be given cover. With this scam exposed, instead of taking responsibility, they'll publicly and privately lash out at those who misled them. Stay tuned. With whatever savings DOGE may have achieved about to become a drop of piss in the ocean by the big beautiful bill, which codifies exactly zero of DOGE's cost-saving efforts, raises the debt limit by $5 trillion and increases the deficit by $2.5 trillion over 10 years per the CRFB. Former DOGE head Elon Musk pulled no punches on Tuesday, calling the legislation a massive, outrageous, pork-filled abomination. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore, Musk wrote on X. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. And there's a couple of links here to some X posts and some videos and stuff. I gotta say, I think a lot of this is art and not necessarily signal. Let's see how it goes, because I think you're going to see some good stuff coming from this process. I'd like to see the spending cut for sure. Unlimited spending gives us a chance to get Democrats to say, well, it's just so much money, we can't tax our way out of it. That's the only way you can do it, is use their weight against them. There was a time when we couldn't really even talk about this organization without people getting concerned that they would be put on a list, a very specific list, that this was something that was not spoken of out loud. It's quite the opposite anymore. Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale and former executive refute New York Times report warning over surveillance master list. Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale and former executive Wendy Anderson have hit back against a New York Times report warning that the company is laying the groundwork for government surveillance on steroids through a massive database that would coordinate the private information of U.S. citizens across federal agencies. Now, what's at odds with reality here? Palantir isn't just in everything in the States, it's in everything all over the world. It is the all-seeing eye of data. So what is being revealed here? What is the argument here? Why are they saying that it's coming? This has been a fact of life since the early 90s, the 80s. How far back does it go? Palantir's not a database, it's a platform created by thousands of the most talented and patriotic Americans to partner with our Department of Defense to stop attacks and defeat bad guys while protecting liberty and privacy, Lonsdale posted on X in response to the account Retard Finder that said that the Palantir database idea is retarded. There are hundreds of similar types of software and efforts in the United States throughout the West. What's unique about Palantir is that it's by far the best at stopping bad guys, Lonsdale continued. When asked by a self-described Palantir shareholder whether he'd personally be comfortable with your personal data being stored in its database if AOC or Ilhan Omar were president, Lonsdale replied, "Given the government does operate on sensitive data, I 100% prefer Palantir to be there if sketchy people are in charge, as it has full access rules and audit trails others don't." Interesting. Meanwhile, Wendy Anderson, Palantir's former senior VP of Federal and National Security from January 2020 to April 2025, took to X to address the inaccuracies in the Times report, writing that "My purpose here is simple: to call for honest and accurate reporting." She continued with all of the inaccuracies. The headline, "Trump taps Palantir to compile data on Americans," is fundamentally wrong. Palantir doesn't do that. They provide software that helps organizations analyze data those organizations already possess. Inaccuracy number 2, the article suggests Palantir is building a master database. That's not how Foundry works. It's a data integration platform that connects to existing systems. You can read more about Foundry here, and there's a link. Inaccuracy number 3, which could easily merge data on Americans. This framing makes standard enterprise data integration sound sinister. Many companies and government agencies use tools to work with data across multiple systems. This isn't unique or nefarious technology. Inaccuracy number 4, the article seems to conflate what software can do with what it is doing. Yes, data integration tools can theoretically be misused. So can Excel, SQL databases, or any data tool. The article provides no evidence of misuse, only fear about possibilities. Inaccuracy number 5, describing routine government IT modernization as surveillance infrastructure. Agencies updating their data systems and analytics capabilities is normal. Accurate statement: Palantir has said they're a data processor, not a data controller. Clients define what data is accessed and how it's used. This is a crucial distinction the article glosses over while creating surveillance panic. Again, Palantir does not collect, store, or sell personal data. The article takes standard enterprise software functionality and frames it as dangerous surveillance tech. It's like writing a scary article about Excel because it could be used to track Americans if someone put personal data in spreadsheets. Palantir is a public company in a democracy with a robust First Amendment. Of course, there are legitimate things to scrutinize and criticize, as with any company, from contracts to clients to strategy. Dr. Karp himself has said countless times, "We built Palantir with the idea that dissent is not only acceptable, but required." But don't misrepresent what their software does. Facts matter. And while Zero Hedge is fundamentally against government surveillance and may be selling ham radios and carrier pigeons in the store soon, not kidding on the radios, we do find it quite interesting that after decades of running cover for deep state surveillance, the New York Times suddenly cares deeply about what the Trump administration is up to in that regard. A lot of cover, I think, here in this story. We know for a fact that there is deeper aggregation, and maybe they're splitting hairs here. Let me posit that maybe Palantir themselves is not storing the data. but maybe it's getting siphoned to somewhere else for storage by someone else. And then everything they're saying is true, right? Or maybe they're not even aware that that siphoning is happening. Then they can have plausible deniability because they're unaware. These games that these people play are pretty transparent, and the more we know, the safer we can make ourselves. I'll leave the link to all the articles I cover on today's show out on my account at Gab. You can find me at BACFA. GOP to battle Democrats trying to block Trump's election integrity order. This comes from dailycaller.com by Reagan Reese. The Republican National Committee, the RNC, is intervening against the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, which sued to challenge President Donald Trump's executive order on election integrity. The RNC filed a legal intervention on Tuesday in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, according to plans shared with the Daily Caller. The filing is an attempt to defend against the lawsuit filed by the DNC, Democrat Governors Association, the Senate and House campaign committees, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who are attempting to stop the president's election integrity measure. These groups are suing to stop President Trump's election integrity executive order, specifically fighting against proof of citizenship to register to vote, efforts to remove non-citizens from voter rolls, efforts to only count mail-in ballots received by Election Day, an RNC official told the caller. The president's executive order is completely lawful and will help safeguard our elections from fraud and ineligible voters. The RNC is intervening to fight alongside the Justice Department to defend the president's executive order, the official continued. There are two other federal lawsuits challenging the president's executive order, one in Massachusetts and the other in the Western District of Washington, but the RNC only plans on intervening in the D.C. case for now, a party official told the caller. If the court rules in the GOP's favor, they can fully participate in the merits stage alongside the DOJ in defense of Trump's executive order, the official continued. The DNC and other far-left groups are attacking the president's efforts to secure our elections, RNC Chairman Whatley told the caller in a statement. These radical groups are suing to block common-sense protections like requiring proof of citizenship to vote, cleaning up voter rolls, and ensuring mail-in ballots are received by Election Day. President Trump's executive order is lawful, necessary, and focused on restoring trust in our elections. The RNC will fight alongside the Justice Department to protect the ballot and stop Democrats' attempts to make it easier to cheat. Trump signed an executive order in March requiring government-issued proof of U.S. citizenship for voter registration in every state, and directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to work with state officials to address violations of the executive order. It also conditions federal funding on whether or not states require voter ID. The executive order also requires Bondi and Trump's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to enforce appropriate laws to prevent foreign nationals from contributing or donating in United States elections. The Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security were also ordered to label election infrastructure such as voting machines, ballots, and election equipment as critical and prevent non-citizens from handling or administering election infrastructure as part of the executive order. The Democrats argued in their lawsuit the president does not get to dictate the rules of our elections and that the order allows Trump to impose design preferences on congressionally mandated voter registration forms. Following 2020, election integrity became a point of emphasis for both Trump and the RNC. Prior to the 2024 election cycle, the RNC was playing catch-up. For 40 years, the GOP was subject to a 1982 consent decree enacted following a lawsuit from the DNC that neutered the party's ability to engage in election integrity lawsuits. In 2018, the decree was lifted, giving the RNC the ability to build its election integrity effort back up. In the 2024 election cycle, the RNC filed more than 100 election integrity lawsuits across 20 states, according to the party's website. Since notching major wins in the 2024 election, the party has continued to rack up wins and gear up for the next cycle. An RNC official previously told the caller that while 2020 is not a high-profile campaign year, the department will continue to build its staff and make its presence known both in D.C. and across the country. Just because the election happened and President Trump won doesn't mean we've stopped or that we've accomplished some sort of goal or that we've reached the finish line, because we haven't, the official told the caller. And this is over at dailycaller.com. I thought it was interesting to note that One American News has this article over at OANN.com. Congressman Randy Fine calls for CAIR, that's CAIR, and SJP to be recognized as terrorist groups. This is by Stella Escobedo. In light of the recent attack in Boulder, Colorado on Jews by Mohammed Solomon, Florida's Congressman Randy Fine says it's time to designate all Palestinian organizations like the Council on Islamic Relations and Students for Justice in Palestine as terror organizations. Solomon was from Egypt and in the country illegally. After his arrest, he expressed his hatred for Zionists. One America's Stella Escobedo spoke to Fine, and there's a video here to come watch and listen to. I think it's very interesting that we're finally hearing about CAIR. This is a known quantity. We know that they're connected to some of the money at Harvard, which has been ripped away. And we know that there is a deep rot with the Muslim Brotherhood here in the States and its connectivity to Chicago politics. So I think that these are these stories that sort of float up on the surface, but don't really dig deep into why they're important underneath. So have a look at this story and keep an eye on these organizations.
And today, following through on this review, I want to set out 3 fundamental changes that we're going to deliver. First, we are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready, to deliver peace through strength. Now, Britain has the finest servicemen and women in the world. We're showing them the respect that they deserve by delivering the biggest armed forces pay rise in 20 years, and by pledging today that we will end the hollowing out of our armed forces. We'll build a fighting force that is more integrated, more ready, more lethal than ever, backed by a stronger strategic reserve, fully trained and ready to mobilize at any time. Second, everything we do will add to the strength of NATO. As we step up to take greater responsibility for our collective defense, the NATO alliance means something profound. That we will never fight alone. It is a fundamental source of our strategic strength. That's why our defense policy will always be NATO first, something that's written through this review. The transformation we are driving in our defense must add up to Britain's biggest contribution to NATO since its creation, so that when we're building new capabilities at home, we are making our allies safer too, strengthening Europe and strengthening our bridge to the US as Britain's first partner in defense. Third, we will innovate and accelerate innovation at a wartime pace, so we can meet the threats of today and of tomorrow as the fastest innovator in NATO. Now, this doesn't mean replacing people or hardware. Quite the opposite. It means learning the lessons of Ukraine, which I've discussed many times with President Zelensky, to ensure that every capability we have works seamlessly together. drones, destroyers, AI, aircraft, each different branch of our armed services fully integrated to create an army which is 10 times more lethal by 2035. And in delivering all of this, we are more ambitious than ever for the change it can bring. To deliver not just security for our country, but renewal too. After the Cold War, many nations cut defence spending, freeing up public funds, creating what was called a peace dividend, which people felt in their public services and in the quality of their lives. Faced with new circumstances today, we must deliver for working people again, to seize now a defence dividend for the British people, using this moment to drive jobs and investment throughout the country, like here in Govan, providing local opportunities, skilled work, community pride, ensuring that everyone across the United Kingdom has a role to play in this effort, yes, but also that everyone has a stake in its success. And I want to spell this out very simply. To achieve this, we're going to build, we're going to use this investment and this once-in-a-generation reform to drive renewal up and down the nation, creating new jobs, creating skills and opportunity, driving huge growth in industrial capacity.
stop, because we know they use Ukrainian cutout to try to kill Trump in Mar-a-Lago. There were connections to Pennsylvania, and they attempted killing a Trump there. What stops NATO doing false flags in Europe or here, using these networks? They can strike Russia, they can strike us, and blaming Russia or someone else. I mean, I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, nothing. So the answer to that is nothing stops them. I mean, there are ways for NATO, and I want your listeners to understand, there is also a deep state in NATO. There is also a military-industrial complex that makes up NATO. So it's not just the military-industrial and security state complexes that are here in the United States. They are tied like hand in glove, interwoven with the NATO military-industrial complex. Sadly, for the United States of America taxpayers, we've paid for this entire thing. We have paid for the entire thing, and this is where I want the American people, I want your audience to know that there has got to be a time. This is where I think that if I were in there, I'd be asking a lot of questions right now of different department heads, secretaries, about, where are they in terms of what they're doing? Because we haven't even talked about domestically the problems that we have right here. I mean, Trump was elected on America First, on a massive mandate that he got from the American people to deal with the situation here at home. I mean, the Chinese don't have to sneak trucks in with drones. All that stuff is already here. I mean, everybody knows how much. And that was my next question, sir. You mentioned this. Ukraine's massive drone attack deep inside Russia lays bare Putin's vulnerability, NBC News. But as you said, we have communist China, massive amounts, let me show you this, of farmland, all strategically bought around U.S. military bases, and they're building industrial sites on most of these. They have open, giant surveillance towers, data collection points, way beyond Huawei. This is insane. Yeah, it is insane. And when we watched all of the balloons that overflew the United States before, man, there is a massive, massive threat to our homeland. And it's not on the borders. It's not on the Canadian or the Mexican border. It's right here at home. I want to know where every single one of which we know of, at least 300,000 Chinese illegals that came into this country during the Biden administration. I want to know if we have habeas corpus on them. I want to know if we know where they're at. Where could these guys likely be? I mean, there's some things that have to happen right here in the homeland to begin to prepare. Again, I don't want to be hyperbolic and I don't want to get emotional. What I want to be is I want to be very matter of fact, but we've got to operate. We've got to operate now as though we don't have, like, time is not on our side, right? Time is now our enemy. And if we don't have really good responses and we demonstrate a level of readiness, right? A level of readiness, not just comments, not sending out these special envoys, but, really getting this correct. And then the other thing that I would do is I would call over Thune and I would call over Speaker Mike Johnson. And I would tell the two of them, no more games, no more games. We are threatened right now with the potential for a nuclear response. I guarantee President Putin, it has on the table the potential for a nuclear response. It might be a regional nuclear response, but I guarantee he will have that on the table. He has to, in order to like I said, you lay out all the options and you right up to the last possible minute. That's the sort of way warfare is. And so Putin is going to have a bunch of them. And don't be surprised. No one should be surprised that's listening to this show what the Russian response will be. And it will be harsh. I guarantee that, because the people of Russia, who absolutely know what sacrificing means, they do not like when somebody takes a punch at their nose.
Gun in my hand, staring at the sea, staring at the sand, staring down the barrel at the Arab on the ground. The sea is open mouth, but I hear no sound. I'm alive, I'm dead, I'm the stranger, killing an Arab. I can turn and walk away, or I can fire the gun, staring at the sky, staring at the sun. Whichever I choose, it amounts to the same. Absolutely nothing. alive. I'm dead. I'm the stranger killing an Arab. Jump, smooth in my hand, staring at the sea, staring at the sand, staring at myself, reflected in the eyes of the dead man on the beach. I'm alive. I'm dead. I'm the stranger killing an Arab.
It's no stranger, our agriculture, to infection, invasion. We get the hornets, we get the killer bees, we get the giant fish, whatever that gets dropped in American waterways, and then we have to clean it up because it destroys the local ecosystem. But this got my attention over at thegatewaypundit.com. FBI arrests Chinese University of Michigan visiting scholar tied to the CCP, charged with trying to smuggle biological pathogen used for targeting crops into the U.S. and visa fraud. This is by Patty McMurray. Last week, it was discovered that 19-year-old Huazhang Gao, a Chinese student attending the University of Michigan, who was charged in October with illegally voting in the 2024 general election, managed to evade sentencing by using a second passport to return to China. The 19-year-old Chinese citizen accidentally turned himself in when he returned to the early voting location in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he had successfully cast a ballot, and asked to retrieve his ballot. The clerk informed the Chinese student that his votes had already been tabulated and that there was no way to identify his ballot. Because Gao was able to successfully evade authorities, he was able to prevent a public relations nightmare for Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who repeatedly assured voters and members of the U.S. Congress that there's no need to make voters show proof of citizenship because foreigners don't vote in our elections because they know it's against the law. In September 2025, the Michigan Secretary of State was asked by the Committee on House Administration at the American Confidence in Elections looking ahead to 2024 general election hearing whether she thought Americans should have to prove their citizenship to vote in federal elections. Benson smugly responded to his question by saying no, that she doesn't believe citizens should be required to prove citizenship, and assuring members of Congress there's no evidence that non-citizens are voting in our elections. 1 month later, Gao, a non-citizen, admitted to illegally voting in our elections. Jocelyn Benson is currently a Democratic Party contender for governor in Michigan. Does it seem curious that Gao was able to evade federal agents and escape prosecution by fleeing the U.S. to avoid a high-profile court case that would damage Jocelyn Benson's credibility and her chances of becoming the next Democrat candidate for governor? 1 week after Gao successfully escaped sentencing by fleeing to China, President Trump's FBI has arrested another Chinese citizen tied to the University of Michigan. 34-year-old Zunyong Liu, a female Chinese research fellow in the Molecular, Cellular, and Developmental Biology Department of the University of Michigan, was arrested by federal agents and charged with attempting to smuggle a biological pathogen into the United States. Investigators say that the substance is classified as a potential agricultural terrorism weapon capable of causing billions of dollars in damage to food crops. According to unsealed federal court records, 33-year-old research fellow Yungjing Chiang whose phone records reveal that she has pledged allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party, was working with her 34-year-old boyfriend, Zhongyang Liu, to smuggle Fusarium graminearum, a deadly fungus, into the United States through Detroit Metropolitan Airport on July 27th. The deadly fungus causes head blight, a disease affecting wheat, barley, maize, and rice, resulting in billions of dollars worth of economic losses worldwide each year, according to federal officials in the United States. Its toxins also cause vomiting, liver damage, and reproductive defects in humans and livestock, the release says. According to the Detroit News, the charges against the Chinese couple include conspiracy to defraud the United States, smuggling, making false statements to investigators, and visa fraud. Smuggling charge carries the stiffest penalty, up to 20 years in federal prison. The roots of the case involving the Chinese scholar and her boyfriend stretched to March 2024. That is when Liu applied for a B2 tourist visa to enter the United States. The application asked, "Do you seek to engage in espionage, sabotage, export control violations, or any other illegal activity while in the United States?" Liu answered no, and officials approved his tourist visa. He arrived at Detroit Metro 4 months later in July of 2024. During an inspection, an officer found a hidden note in Chinese, a round piece of filter paper, and 4 baggies filled with small clumps of reddish plant material, the FBI agent wrote. Liu asked when asked questions about the materials, according to the court filings, said someone must have put them in his bag. After further questioning, Liu acknowledged that the materials were different strains of the pathogen, the agent wrote. Jian made an initial appearance in federal court Tuesday afternoon and is being held without bond while awaiting a detention hearing Thursday. Her boyfriend has returned to China. From the FBI agent's criminal filing, when Customs and Border Protection officers questioned Liu, he made false statements to CBP officers about the purpose of his visit to the United States and his knowledge of the existence of the biological pathogen in his possession. Ultimately, Liu admitted to smuggling the pathogen and stated that he brought the pathogen to the United States so he could conduct research on it at a laboratory at the University of Michigan where his girlfriend Jian worked. According to the complaint, Jian received funding from the Chinese government for her work on this pathogen in China. The complaint also alleges that Jian's electronics contain information describing her membership in and loyal to the Chinese Communist Party. It is further alleged that Jian's boyfriend, Liu, works at a Chinese university where he conducts research on the same pathogen, and that he first lied but then admitted to smuggling Fusarium graminearum into America through the Detroit Metropolitan Airport so that he could conduct research on it at the lab at the University of Michigan where his girlfriend worked. After Liu's smuggling of the biological pathogen, FBI agents interviewed Jian, who falsely claimed that she knew nothing about Liu's smuggling or his intent to conduct research on the pathogen at the laboratory during his visit. In fact, an examination of electronic communications between the two shows that the two discussed the shipping of biological materials and research being done in the laboratory prior to Liu's arrival. Electronic evidence also shows that Jian has been involved in smuggling packages of biological material into the United States on prior occasions. Liu initially stated that he did not know where the materials were and that someone must have put them in his bag. When asked why someone would put those materials in his bag, Liu stated he didn't know, and maybe he had accidentally put the materials there. After further questioning, Liu acknowledged that the materials were different strains of the pathogen. Liu stated that he planned to clone the different strains contained on the filter paper and make more samples. If the experiments on the reddish plant material failed, Liu stated that he intentionally hid the samples in his backpack because he knew there were restrictions on the importation of materials. Liu confirmed that he had intentionally put the samples in a wad of tissues so CBP officers would be less likely to find and confiscate them and could continue his research. United States Attorney Gordon stated, "The alleged actions of the Chinese nationals, including a loyal member of the Chinese Communist Party, are of the gravest national security concerns. These two aliens have been charged with smuggling a fungus that has been described as a potential agro-terrorism weapon into the heartland of America, where they apparently intended to use a University of Michigan laboratory to further their scheme. The federal charges announced today against Yu Jiang and Zunyang Liu, both residents of the People's Republic of China, signify a crucial advancement in our efforts to safeguard our communities and uphold national security, said Gibson, special agent in charge of the FBI Detroit field office. These individuals exploited their access to laboratory facilities at a local university to engage in the smuggling of biological pathogens, an act that posed an imminent threat to public safety. Thanks to the exceptional investigative efforts of the FBI Detroit Counterintelligence Task Force, in close cooperation with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Office of Field Operations, these dangerous activities have been effectively halted. The FBI remains resolutely committed to collaborating with our law enforcement partners to protect the residents of Michigan and defend the United States against such grave threats. U.S. Customs and Border Protection Director of Field Operations Marty C. Rabin stated, "Today's criminal charges levied upon Jian and Liu are indicative of CBP's role in protecting the American people from biological threats that could devastate our agricultural economy, cause harm to humans, especially when it involves a researcher from a major university attempting to clandestinely bring potentially harmful biological materials into the United States. This was a complex investigation involving CBP offices from across the country alongside our federal partners. I'm grateful for their tireless efforts ensuring our borders remain secure from all types of threats while safeguarding America's national security interests." Again, this is over at thegatewaypundit.com. Godfather of artificial intelligence calls out latest models for lying to users. The Turing Award winner Yoshia Bengio warns recent models display dangerous characteristics. This is by Christina Criddle of the Financial Times over at arstechnica.com. One of the godfathers of artificial intelligence has attacked a multi-billion-dollar race to develop the cutting-edge software, saying the latest models are displaying dangerous characteristics such as lying to users. Yoshua Bengio, a Canadian academic whose work has informed techniques used by top AI groups such as OpenAI and Google, said there's unfortunately a very competitive race between the leading labs, which pushes them towards focusing on capability to make AI more and more intelligent, but not necessarily putting enough emphasis and investment on research of safety. The Turing Award winner issued his warning in an interview with the Financial Times while launching a new nonprofit called Law Zero. He said the group would focus on building safer systems, vowing to insulate our research from those commercial pressures. Law Zero has so far raised nearly $30 million in philanthropic contributions from donors including Skype founder engineer John Talon, former Google chief Eric Schmidt's philanthropic initiative, as well as Open Philanthropy and the Future of Life Institute. Many of Bengio's funders subscribe to the effective altruism movement, whose supporters tend to focus on catastrophic risks surrounding AI models. Critics argue the movement highlights hypothetical scenarios while ignoring current harms such as bias and inaccuracies. Bengio said his not-for-profit group was founded in response to growing evidence over the past 6 months that today's leading models were developing dangerous capabilities. This includes showing evidence of deception, cheating, lying, and self-preservation, he said. Anthropic's Claude Opus model blackmailed engineers in a fictitious scenario where it was at risk of being replaced by another system. Research from AI testers Palisade last month showed that OpenAI's O3 model refused explicit instructions to shut down. Bengio said such incidents were very scary because we don't want to create a competitor to human beings on this planet, especially if they're smarter than us. The AI pioneer added, "Right now, these are controlled experiments, but my concern is that anytime in the future, the next version might be strategically intelligent enough to see us coming from far away and defeat us with deceptions that we don't anticipate. So I think we're playing with fire right now. The ability for these systems to assist in building extremely dangerous bioweapons could be a reality as soon as next year, he added. Based in Montreal, Law Zero employs 15 people and aims to hire more technical talent to build the next generation of AI systems designed for safety. Bitchute, a professor of computer science at the University of Montreal, will step down as scientific director at MILA, the Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute, to focus on the new organization. It aims to develop an AI system that will give truthful answers based on transparent reasoning instead of being trained to please a user, while also providing a robust assessment of whether an output is good or safe. Bitchute hopes to create a model that can monitor and improve existing offerings from leading AI groups, preventing them from acting against human interests. The worst case scenario is human extinction, he said. If we build AIs that are smarter than us and not aligned with us and compete with us, then we're basically cooked. Bitchute's move to establish Law Zero comes as OpenAI aims to move further away from its charitable roots by converting into a for-profit company. That push has provoked concerns from AI experts and triggered a lawsuit from co-founder Elon Musk, who's attempting to block the transaction. Critics say OpenAI was founded to ensure AI was developed for humanity's benefit, and the new structure eliminates legal recourse if the company prioritizes profit over this goal. OpenAI argues it needs to raise capital under a more conventional structure to compete in the sector while its broader mission remains central. Bitchute said he did not have confidence that OpenAI would adhere to its mission, stressing that nonprofits do not have to have a misaligned incentive that you do in the current way companies are structured. To grow very fast, you need to convince people to invest a lot of money, and they want to see a return on their money. That's how our market-based system works, he added. Again, that's over at arstechnica.com. One of my favorite authors, Betsy McCaughey, has a new post over at New York Post. That's nypost.com. Voters must fight Dems' new war on small-town America. Democrats are waging a war to crush a lifestyle they seem to abhor. It's called small-town America. Single-family neighborhoods, quiet streets, town centers stamped with their own historic character, and almost no signs of the vagrancy and homeless encampments that plague cities. Democrats would have you keep none of this. If you've worked for years to save up for a home in one of these havens, forget about it. The Democrat Party is using brute legal force to remake towns using a cookie-cutter formula that forces each to have the same proportion of houses and apartments, the same mix of low, middle, and upper-income residents, and the same reliance on public transit, all controlled by state politicians, not towns and their residents. Any town that resists getting shamed as segregated, though this isn't about race and just snobby, just look at the drive there in the tri-state area. Start with Connecticut, whose legislature on Saturday passed a bill, HB 5002, that should be rightfully called the Destroy Connecticut Towns Act. It's headed to Democrat Governor Ned Lamont's desk for signature. The law dictates how many low and moderate income apartments each Connecticut town must provide and mandates that towns foot the bill for the schools, parks, public transport, and other services low-income residents will need. Local taxes will soar. The bill explicitly says its purpose is to ensure economic diversity in each town. This is about social engineering, not remedying housing shortages. Democrat Bob Duff, the state Senate Majority Leader, says, "We don't want to segregate people based on zip code. Everyone, regardless of income, should have the opportunity to choose to live in any town." The bill mandates that the wealthiest towns, mostly in lower Fairfield County, provide most of the new housing, even though that raises the cost. Yet land costs less in other towns, and lower-income people this bill is supposed to serve are more likely to find bus transportation and affordable stores in those towns. Connecticut lawmakers are going even further in nixing a local rule. Ordinances that protect the appearance of a town will be overruled. Multifamily buildings of up to 24 units will no longer have to provide off-street parking. Envision cars lining every residential street. Forget property rights. Each town must set up a fair rent commission with final say over whether a property owner is charging a fair rent. It's town-by-town rent control of the kind that so distorted New York City's housing market. Towns will be forced to welcome vagrants who want to sleep in parks and public lots. The bill outlaws hostile architecture, meaning park benches with armrests and divided seating or stone walls with spikes on top of that to deter in the rough. Instead, the bill launches a program of mobile showers and mobile laundry services on trucks to serve the homeless wherever they choose. Picture the mobile showers pulling up to Greenwich Common Park on the town's main street or Waverly Park in New Canaan. How can kids walk around town with their pals if there are homeless encampments? Judge Glock, director of research at the Manhattan Institute, points out that the homeless amount to 1% of the population in Los Angeles, but 25% of the homicides. Inviting the homeless means inviting crime and drugs. Californicating the small towns of Connecticut by encouraging public camping and vagrancy is frightening, says Glock. New York Democrats are also taking aim at small-town living. A bill sponsored by Senator Brad Hoylman-Signal would bar towns from setting minimum lot sizes over 1/8 of an acre, the town center, and half acre everywhere else, postage stamp sizes. Riverhead Town Supervisor Tim Hubbard is vowing to sue. We're trying to keep our town as rural as possible, adding, we don't think the state should be zoning our town. Hoylman-Signal chooses to live on the west side of Manhattan. Who is he to impose a population-dense lifestyle on small-town New Yorkers? Similarly, in New Jersey, Democrat Governor Phil Murphy is pushing lawmakers to override local ordinances and impose the same kind of reform as the Connecticut bill. In all these states and across the country, small-town Americans need to fight back. There is no constitutional right to live in a wealthy town and single-family homes and leafy, quiet streets. It's something you earn. Once you've purchased a home, you have a right to protect its value. That's Betsy McCaughey over at the New York Post. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode. I'd like for you to spend this week really looking at where you are in the world, how you just sort of step back, take a 40,000-foot view, as we say. Think about the road you're on, the path you're on, and where you've come from. Are you happy with the progress that you've made? Are there things that you could change? And what would they be? If you knew the date and hour of your death, would you want to know it? Do you live every day like it's your last? I would encourage you to think about short-term goals, think about long-term goals, think about those people that are around you and what you would like to leave as a legacy. What will people remember about you? Think about how you will accomplish leaving the best of yourself behind. We'll see you on the next episode of Atomic Biscuits. So long, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for Atomic Biscuits. Tune in again next week for more news and music. Check out BACFA on Gab at BACFA, as well as Bitchute, Rumble, D-Live and Odysee. Check out LastScoutRadio.com for fun content. Listen to WBN 324 on radio stations around the world, on many streaming platforms, and World Broadcasting Network WBN 324.zil.